we're seeing it. It's visual. But when we're feeling it, like you said, we don't give ourselves enough credit for that, because you can definitely feel it. And it might not even be something where, I mean, it's happened to me with business a lot. You know, when we want to collaborate with someone and we're like, oh, this would be the perfect collaboration. It's going to be the best ever. And then you end up just not being on the same page energetically. Like, let's start there. Like, you know, the contract is done, you know, or whatever. The plans are there. The date is set. Whatever it is. Excuse me. And then you don't end up on the same page. It's okay. And I've learned this the hard way. It's okay if you don't feel it to walk away from it. Sometimes it's better to walk away from it and stop it before it goes too far, and then you don't even end up liking what came out of it. So sometimes, you know, or sometimes it could even be simpler than that. You know?
Do you think there's one person for one person kind of a thing?
But I believe that a lot of people miss their people. You know, like we were talking before, like we didn't put these words on it, but like missing your moment. You know, and like I think that there's a lot of people who miss it, or maybe you meet that person and you let them get away from you for whatever other reason. It could be that there's someone from your past that's interjecting with you, and their voice is louder than the person or the, you know, whatever's calling you towards that other person, and you miss out on them. Or it could be because you're stubborn, you know, and it could like there could be so many different things, and you're like, oh well, people usually come chasing after me, and this might be the person who's not chasing after me, so you don't meet them halfway or something, you know. Like I do believe that there's one person out there for everyone, but I don't, who's to say if you're gonna meet them, because what if you die and you don't meet them? Like, you know the movie
damn, pause.
Okay.
Damn. Yes, and
acts of service type person. So immediately, like that summer, I went home and I started doing things that an acts of service person would appreciate, like mowing the lawn without him asking. Simple stuff where I'm like, you know, I'm thinking personal time. Dad, I want you to come out here and visit me and come to, like, he always made my shows, but like I used to do like shows like all summer long, and like my mom was there like 80 times because she's a personal timer too.
Okay.
But like he, you know, I'm always thinking I can love on him like that, but it wasn't. It was through acts of service, and like the little acts of service of like getting him, not necessarily a gift because he's not a gifts guy, but getting him something that he already needed, like that kind of stuff. It just changed our relationship so much, to the point where my dad was he went to a Pride before I did.
What?
He was there selling water bottles because he's like, hey, I'm going to support it. I love my son. And I was like, what? I haven't even gone to a Pride yet. What are you doing, Dad?
The phenomenon to me is that it influences little boys as much as it influences little girls.
Well, yeah, I mean, I didn't even touch on that, but like, yeah, because then you have little boys growing up thinking that like this is how
they're supposed to act too,
or this is how girls act. That's like another big one that I could talk about, is like, you know, as a woman, and I speak for my colleagues too, who are actors and singers in musical theater. It's like we're most of the time, I mean, it's like really 98% of the time, I think we're singing songs and speaking dialogue in these musical shows that are written by men, and it's what they think we would speak like,
rather than how women actually speak.
Yeah, I mean, I use this example all the time because I think it's really funny. It's like the opening number of Legally Blonde. It's like, oh my god, you guys. And if like I was looking at it,
your emotions, you're playing with the chemicals in your head to figure out what makes you laugh, to then go, okay, this is what I think is funny, I'm going to say it. And then people are either going to go, yeah, your thought was right there. That little tinge, those few words and that little tinge of intentional emotion that you put behind that 4 words, 5 words, 6 words, however long your punchline is, like that's, you go, yeah, that I thought that was going to be funny. And if it isn't, then you have to go back and you have to not only retool the 5 or 6 or 7 words, but you have to retool the story leading up to the punchline, the story leading up to when the joke drops, because all those words and all those little intentions and that crawling that you
equalize how we can overcome said bullshit.
Yeah, I think my goal with creating it, I believe that the tests are going to become obsolete really soon.
I hope we see that soon.
Like I was saying the next 3 to 5 years, but I said that 2 years ago, so it's not true. I will now say the next decade. I hope that it becomes true. And my goal is just to progress that process, because if everybody is scoring, like my students, our averages are top 98th percentile, just from showing up every day for half an hour and dosing yourself with this way of thinking that is about the way of thinking. It's not about the skills. In fact, I was working with a student the other day who I said, let's make it really easy for you. You're not allowed to do math on the math section. This student is an amazing writer, and she's an amazing...
I mean, I love music and I love doing the movements. So it was actually just fun to get up there and kind of like do my thing, you know, and it's unique and people like to watch, like they like to watch it. So yeah, it kind of feels natural to go into that. But again, it is a whole different world that I'm not super familiar with. And I can't, you know, I was taking some advanced contortion classes at the Cirque school, and I just can't afford to pay right now. Like it's $40 for a drop-in, and those classes do kick my ass. Like this little lady, this little woman, she
your
worked
eyebrows
me.
were so up.
Oh my god, she'll be like, get up on these canes, like contortion handstand, contortion hand, and like she's just like this little petite woman, and she's very sweet, but the shit she's asking you to do is hard as fuck, and you're just like, oh my god. Like
she's hardcore.
She's hardcore, but she, you know, they know what they're doing at the Cirque school. Like I feel like if anyone wants to go learn like handstands, hand balancing.
Like the whole story of him and all is fake, and he never existed. We were such an understanding species of ourselves that even if that story is made up, we were able to write in, this guy came in and told everyone to be peaceful to each other, and he got murdered for it because humans and all. And it's just like, yeah, if anything, that's what I'm saying. Like, it doesn't matter if Jesus was real or not. His death, his messages, but also the reaction to his messages and his death, like that is a ripple that has like stuck with. And that's honestly, that's what the main split is. Like people who aren't even religious like myself, I have no problem quoting Jesus, because to people who are terrible and awful and Christian, I'm repeating your boy's words back to you and all. It's
I love that you brought up the golden rule, because that's the only thing all religions agree on. And that to me, when I was talking earlier about things moving towards this more spiritual, less of a institutionalized structure.
Because especially I think in American society, there is an image of a person who is super ambitious, successful, career-oriented, right? And if you are successful, everyone wants to be your friend, and the
American dream.
yeah, American dream. But be vulnerable and honest with yourself and with other people. It requires strength, and to me, it's opportunity to embrace my vulnerability and see if I'm able to be truly honest and open and share my story with other people. And maybe my story might help someone.
I want to say constantly question things, because the more you question your own actions, the less certainty you're going to have in your life and less confidence you're going to have, and that just leads to low self-esteem. But asking questions, not only that, but asking the right questions is very powerful. But going to people and seeking just answers for your problems, the best thing to do is ask them questions that'll help them find the answer to their own problems, because everybody has a different answer from their problems. The answer that you can create for yourself is going to be way more powerful and is actually going to stick better than the answer that I can give you.
Totally. And food comes in as a great metaphor, again, that different foods are going to work differently for different bodies at different times.
Yeah. So, I can ask people, what's holding you back? This. Okay, cool. And then just lead from there for the more questions. Then after a while, they answered the question, they got their answer. It's like, all right, good. Hold you accountable for doing that.
Let's see this line up in your choices.
Yeah.
First, let's reflect on the choices.
Yeah.
Definitely, the idea of judgment and shame like, if, you know, it's all really just things that we're struggling with in ourselves. But then, like, then I just start to feel like I'm a shitty person. I must be really shitty if I judge all these people. If I do that a lot, then what does that mean about me? Like, what am I hung up on in myself? And this is, you know, one of the struggles with believing that everybody's doing the best they can. I've worried that believing that would be letting myself off the hook from doing more, from being better, of trying harder for others. Like,
and for you, I love you bringing this up. It's so this reminds me of, to again give a tangible reflection of my journey with food and learning about, to use the label of intuitive eating.
It causes me to stretch myself. And so fear, if you're someone who's saying, hey, I'd really like to stretch and expand myself, I'd really like to penetrate the unknown, I'd really like to kind of disrupt some of these patterns, which I think a lot of people who are on spiritual journeys are doing. Dude, fear's one of your allies. It's one of your signposts. It's one of your, like, you got this, dude. You're going in the right direction.
The other side of fear.
Yeah.
Cliches are cliches for
a reason.
And that's a great one for that.
Yeah, it totally is. And I would even take it a step further, which is, this is newer in my thoughts. It's not as developed, but is that it's not just I experience the unknown and then I feel fear. I don't think emotions and experience happen quite so causally or so linearly. I would posit that fear, the experience of it in your body and in your mind, because when you experience fear, we just talked about the body things, you sweat, you tense, all these things. There's also a cognitive thing. Oh God, what's happening? I can't. Thoughts come. So that's the whole soup of fear.
My truth is rooted in what I stand for, as far as like my overall belief systems, I think. And my truths also have evolved and changed considerably. You know, as you mentioned, I am a cancer survivor, and I mean, I have a podcast called Kappa Kappa Cancer, Your Guide to the Sorority You Never Wanted to Join, where I talk very openly and rawly about the process of getting diagnosed. And even the first episode is called Stupid Shit People Say When You Have Cancer, because there were so many things that I discovered through that process. And so now part of my truth has been to really speak up and speak out and calling people on some of the really uninformed and irresponsible things that they say as it relates to cancer, which people flip it.
Whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, I mean,
people need people.
You need people. I find myself being introverted quite a bit, but there's always that need for connection, and true connection, not necessarily service connection, which is sometimes fine, whether it's at a party or a conversation that is totally on the surface. But the deeper connection, it allows you to feel. I mean, it allows you to feel human. It allows you to feel like a person. It allows you to establish a connection so that you're not going through life with blinders on, sort of just tuned out to everything around you, which is honestly so easy to do these days. I mean, we have these wonderful devices that, you know, we can send emails from and text and look on Instagram and check Twitter and make phone calls and these things. And it's so interesting to me when you walk down the street, and I'm guilty of it just like everybody else, that you can walk down the street and people are just sort of looking down glued to their phones. And it's been not surprising because you can definitely see it
in the very beginning, and you are attached to the idea of a perfect person, a perfect partner, or you're attached to the idea of what things could be like in a few years. You know, I really want to get married and I want to have kids. And that's the idea that I'm attached to, rather than who is this person in front of me right here, right now, today, and do I like hanging out with them, which is kind of how things started between my partner and I, and how we still kind of roll. You know, it's cheesy. It's very cheesy, but I do feel like I fall more in love with him as the years go by, and you learn more about each other. And we talked about this too, about how in 10.5 years you go through so many changes, you know? So how could you be attached to something that is ever changing, you know?
Alan Watts says a thing where the ego is like a sonar on a submarine. it's constantly scanning for danger, and it's boom, it's like just finding all the rocks and everything in its way. And after a while, that's how we associate life. So we're in a constant state of anxiety because we're constantly looking for danger. But the flip side of that is you don't realize that there's a whole ocean of, of a world around you. You're just like, this, I'm scared, I'm scared, I'm scared, I'm scared, I'm scared, I'm scared. So yeah, when I heard that, I was like, oh, you can kind of disassociate with that voice a little bit. But it's there. It's, that voice pops up when you're driving. It pops up when you're, when I'm teaching sometimes. It's, in class today, I'm like, oh, this is shit. Everyone hates this. Is going. It's like, but that's just a thought, right? And that's like your core thought of that is a weird way. It's trying to protect you from getting hurt, but it becomes.
Nobody lives a highlight reel. Like, when they lived highlight reels? Back when they lived in the Wild West. And even then, it sucked kind of, because if you got shot in the stomach, you were going to die soon because they couldn't fucking fix it yet. So in any regard, life has always sucked and it will always suck, but life has always been amazing and it will always be amazing. And I understand the impetus for sharing your highlight reel, but nobody is living a fucking highlight reel. Everybody has struggles. Everybody has things that they're walking through, and we pretend that we don't, so we ruin the conversation that could be so beautiful. Share gross shit. Share what you're struggling with. That I've been off social media, I think, for 3 months now or something.
Yeah, that was part of what sparked me to bring it up.
Oh,
it's
sick.
Thinking about pros and cons of it.
Yeah, and I've been thinking about getting it back because Bryn and I are going to start a business, and I'm trying to really walk through it carefully because
the same interracially than we are intraracially, if that makes sense. So it's all of our personalities are different. So me and you could have more in common than me and someone who looks more like me, because our brain patterns work maybe similarly, because we do get along, and maybe I wouldn't get along with her. You know what I mean? It's one of those things of adding a different perspective into the world, of more biological, or more, the different ways you can think about things, rather than just one way of just racially, or just I don't know, physically, or just, all those things. It's a way of thinking about it differently and finding a new perspective and seeing what other ways it would work or not work. And just, I don't know, analyzing life, I guess, is what I do. And that's just how I do.
Black and white into food has been probably the most tangible, sort of obvious example of black and white thinking. I've gone into super extremes of making literally all of the food rules for myself, and then also super extremes of no food rules, and no, the rule is no rules, almost as obsessively as obsessive angry vegan phase, Annie. And I'm not a vegan at this juncture, and I do care a lot about ending factory farming and a lot of things that vegans talk about and other food labels talk about, and I care a hell of a lot more about food access and distribution. And to come back to that idea of using the yes and between black and white versus gray, there is use of talking about food labels, talking about the different ways that we can feed ourselves and people, and there's use in.
And then if I'm able to say, okay, I'm naming that I'm in a story, it's I can put the story outside of me and look at it, and then I can choose, do I want to stay in this and just be curious, or do I want to just run away? And also open my mind up to the fact that maybe there's not a ultimate right or wrong decision. I was raised Protestant Christian, so, and even though my parents weren't fundamentalists or deeply conservative, I was around that kind of atmosphere. So, like many people who've grown up religious, there's we have a deep relationship with guilt and fear and this idea that there is a right way and a wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
And as I've gotten older, I'm really starting to look at finding the middle ground between the black and the white.
All together. And I am in the camp, the belief group of time being a circle. That is how I visualize it. Sometimes I visualize it more as a spiral and this sort of journey we're going in circles where we go into ourselves more or out and expand into the world while we connect with other people more. And like good and bad being made up, duality is made up in a sense that it's a yes and. We are in this physical reality. We are matter, and also we are energy. There's more than just this physical reality. So black and white could potentially represent the physical reality, and gray is representing the things that we can't see, we can't touch, and we all experience. And that place of the gray to me is the more feelings-based.
Totally, what you're saying resonated so much around, like, even just going back to the food rules on the personal level. Like, thank you so much for sharing that. Like, because it really, I see a direct parallel to, okay, money rules, right? Like, what, and this question of like, why is there hunger? Like, the question I have too is like, why is there poverty? There's plenty of money, there's plenty of resources to go around, but the wealth inequality gap is so vast and so wide. And you're right, like, thinking about this stuff and talking about this stuff, it can be really easy to really mess up your mental health, right? Just because the vastness of the problem is so great. And still, like you said, like we still must find spaces for joy, for optimism, for rest, for connection with one another. All is not lost, but we have a ton of work to do.
Just did it. that isn't a right or a wrong. That is me doing what is aligned with me right now. And having someone to reflect that and to point out the ways that I can learn from that is beyond valuable because I need that reflection. This is we're social creatures and we are the only ones responsible for our own happiness. And that's a weird thing to sit with. It's just the yes and keeps coming around, that there are rules and there aren't rules. And how are those both true? Somehow they are. You need to have opinions, and also your opinions are just opinions. Duality exists, and duality definitely doesn't exist.
Now, coming out of it is a milestone, or being in it?
Both.
Because
I love that, Stacy.
Because though a milestone. Okay, you and I both lost a parent.
Mm-hmm.
I don't consider that a milestone. I don't know why. We both share that. I know it. It's not. It's still seems something positive to me as a milestone, and that is not a milestone. If you know what I mean. If we're using it that technic,
totally
like that way, but
to me,
the milestone of death. But the milestone of death would be the transition, the grief, the anger, those are milestones. The getting out of the pain of that would be the milestone.
So I actually had a flight booked from Hawaii to St. Louis the day that my dad died. So that was I was already kind of coming on to letting go of coincidence as a thing, and that was a big step in that direction. And I am fortunate enough that I video chatted with him the day before, and he actually did a peace sign to the camera that he put on a sideways, kind of like poking fun at my hippiedom. That wasn't something that he did normally. And I gotta say I love you to him as the last thing, and I said I'm so excited to see you, and something about being there, and I gotta say I love you. And I'm really grateful that for my sense of closure, quote unquote, same access to resources,
people, equality,
Some of these kids going to shitty ass schools to 5th grade. They finally get to 6th grade where they're getting the same stuff as the kids that been getting everything from kindergarten on up. It's still not gonna be enough because you have 7 years of them not getting enough. So it's still always gonna be a disservice from them. It's still never gonna be enough. It's still gonna be fighting for it. It's still not gonna be a balance. It's still gonna be some prejudice because you got people who just now getting it versus getting it. It's just like when people talk about reparations. Well, reparations is just equality. Well, it's like, well, equity. Well, I get equality for like but if you want to give every child truly the opportunity to succeed in the same education, let them know about everything. Don't hide ignorance from children.